In 1900, a Siberian hunter named Semyon Tarabikin was moving cautiously through the frozen wilderness near the Berezovka River, following the faint traces of game across the endless permafrost. Suddenly, his dogs began to behave in a way he had never seen before. Restless, agitated, almost terrified, as if they had sensed something unnatural hidden beneath the ice. Drawn by their reaction, he followed them to the edge of a riverbank where the frozen ground had partially collapsed, exposing what lay beneath. From the icy wall protruded a massive, curved tusk, emerging from the earth like a relic from another world. It was not just bone. It was something far more extraordinary. What Tarabikin had stumbled upon was beyond anything known at the time. Embedded in the frozen soil was the body of a woolly mammoth, preserved almost entirely intact, its skin still clinging to its massive frame, as if death had come only moments before. The discovery was so astonishing that word quickly spread beyond the remote Siberian wilderness, eventually reaching the Russian Imperial Academy of Sciences. Recognizing the significance of what had been found, they wasted no time. A full scientific expedition was organized and sent deep into the frozen north to recover what would become one of the most important and mysterious discoveries of its kind. When the researchers finally uncovered the creature in full, they were confronted not just with a well-preserved specimen, but with a moment frozen in time. The mammoth's body was contorted, its muscles locked in tension, its final movement captured with unsettling clarity. But it was what they found inside the mammoth that transformed the discovery into a profound mystery. Within its mouth and stomach were fresh grasses and delicate buttercups, plants that could only grow in warm conditions. These were not fossilized remnants or degraded material, but recognizable vegetation that suggested the animal had been feeding shortly before its death. The implication was impossible to ignore. A creature weighing several tons cannot freeze instantly under normal environmental conditions. Even in extreme cold, its internal heat would take considerable time to dissipate, allowing digestion and decay to continue. Yet this mammoth had been halted in mid-action, its last meal undigested, its body preserved in a way that suggested an abrupt and catastrophic change. Something had occurred with such speed and intensity that it bypassed the gradual processes of nature entirely. But what? What kind of sudden cataclysmic event could freeze in a matter of minutes, if not seconds, an entire continent? As investigators continued to study what would become known as the Berezovka mammoth, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. This was not an isolated case buried deep within a single patch of frozen soil. Across Siberia, Alaska, and the Arctic regions, similar discoveries began to surface with increasing frequency. Mammoths, bison, horses, and rhinoceroses were being uncovered not as scattered bones, but as complete bodies, preserved in a state so lifelike that their final moments seemed almost recent. Each discovery carried the same unsettling signature: animals frozen in motion, their muscles tensed, their expressions locked, their last breaths seemingly captured within their frozen forms. There were no signs of prolonged suffering or slow decline. No gradual decay, no scavenging, no disintegration. Instead, there was only interruption, as if the world itself had been abruptly paused. In the remote and windswept reaches of southern Siberia, deep within the frozen soils of the Altai Mountains, one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the 20th century emerged from the permafrost. A team of Russian archaeologists discovered a burial mound that was entirely frozen since the Iron Age. Inside, they found one of the most preserved prehistoric human bodies ever found, the body of a woman known today as the Ice Maiden, or the Ukok Princess. Despite being over 2,000 years old, it was in such good condition that the skin was still intact. Her body was adorned with intricate tattoos, mythical creatures, flowing patterns, and animal motifs that revealed a highly developed artistic tradition. These tattoos, still visible after more than 2,000 years, are among the oldest ever discovered, providing rare insight into the symbolic and spiritual life of her people. The Ice Maiden was dressed in fine clothing made of wool and silk, materials that suggested not only craftsmanship, but also long-distance trade connections. She wore a tall headdress and was accompanied by various grave goods, including food, tools, and 6 horses that had been sacrificed and buried nearby. These elements indicated that she held a position of high status within her society, possibly a priestess or a figure of spiritual significance. Her braided hair was remarkably preserved, and even her garments, woven with care by a long-lost culture, showed little sign of decay, protected within a frozen chamber that had sealed her away from the world. What made the discovery even more unsettling was the environment in which she had been found. Shortly after her burial, the tomb had filled with water, possibly from melting snow or seasonal seepage, and then, in a rare and precise alignment of conditions, it froze solid. That ice remained stable for centuries, insulating her from oxygen, bacteria, and time itself. It was not simply preservation, but suspension, as though the moment of her burial had never fully concluded. There were no interruptions in this frozen state, no evidence of thawing that might have allowed decay to begin. The chamber became a sealed pocket of history, immune to the fluctuations of climate that reshaped the world above it. Generations passed, empires rose and fell, yet she remained unchanged beneath the ice. It is as if she existed outside of time, held in a silent stillness that defied the natural order. And yet her preservation raises the same unsettling question as the frozen animals of the north. What precise conditions are required to halt decay so completely, to preserve not just bone but skin, color, and detail? Whether by natural coincidence or something far less understood, the Ice Maiden stands as a human reflection of the same mystery seen across the frozen world, a life captured, not in death alone, but in a moment that was never allowed to fade. The deeper researchers look into these frozen archives, the more they encounter evidence that challenges the notion of slow, predictable change and begin to hint at a rapid, cataclysmic freezing apocalypse. In 2017, deep within the frozen wilderness of the Sakha Republic in Siberia, locals exploring a region locked in thick permafrost made a discovery that seemed almost impossible. Hidden beneath layers of ancient ice lay the perfectly preserved body of a Eurasian cave lion cub, an animal that until then had only been known through scattered fossils and fragments of bone. The cub, later named Sparta, was estimated to have been only 1 to 2 months old at the time of her death, her small body frozen in a moment that had remained untouched for tens of thousands of years. Scientists believe that a sudden mudslide may have split open the ground beneath her, causing her to fall and become instantly trapped. Buried in freezing conditions, her body was naturally mummified in a way that defied expectations. Her fur, skin, organs, and even her teeth remained almost exactly as they had been on the day she died. So extraordinary was her preservation that researchers described her as the best preserved Ice Age animal ever discovered, a specimen so intact it felt as though time itself had paused. Just 1 year later, another discovery deepened the mystery. A second cub named Baris was found only 15 meters away from where Sparta had been uncovered. Yet despite their proximity, radiocarbon analysis revealed a staggering difference in age. Sparta lived around 28,000 years ago, while Baris dated back more than 43,000 years. These cubs belonged to one of the largest lion species to ever exist, towering up to 5 feet in height and stretching over 11 feet in length. They once roamed the same harsh landscapes alongside reindeer, horses, and even woolly mammoths, apex predators of a world long vanished. The reasons for their extinction remain a mystery, though most scientists point to a rapid climate shift. Far to the east of the great Siberian rivers, a vast scar has opened in the earth. This place, known today as the Batagaika crater, is not a typical geological formation. It is a wound in the permafrost, a slowly expanding abyss where layers of frozen ground, some dating back tens of thousands of years, are being exposed to the modern world for the very first time. It was here, deep within this frozen collapse, that another astonishing discovery came in the form of a prehistoric horse, preserved so well that scientists were able to extract actual liquid blood from its body. Not traces, not residue, but fresh, flowing blood, making it the oldest liquid blood ever recorded. The foal, estimated to be around 42,000 years old, yet despite the immense passage of time, the animal appeared almost untouched, as if it had died only recently. This young creature, identified as a leaner horse or Equus caballus linensis, was only 1 to 2 weeks old at the moment of its death. Scientists believe it likely drowned in soft mud, becoming trapped before the rapidly freezing environment sealed its fate. What followed was an extraordinary natural preservation process. Its body remained intact down to the finest details, individual hairs, delicate tissues, and even traces of urine still present in its bladder, frozen in time. The preservation of soft tissue is rare enough, but the survival of liquid biological material pushes the boundaries of what is considered plausible. Its existence suggests that whatever conditions led to its preservation were not gradual but immediate and extreme, halting decay before it could even begin. The surrounding sediments offered a partial glimpse into what may have occurred. Layers of earth appeared to have shifted rapidly, as though the ground itself had given way beneath the animal. In such a scenario, the foal could have been engulfed within seconds, buried alive beneath a collapsing surface. But even this explanation leaves questions unanswered. What caused this collapse and the formation of the massive crater, and most importantly, what caused this sudden drop in temperature to such a deadly frozen state? Researchers are actively attempting to extract viable DNA from the preserved tissues, focusing on muscle and organ samples in hopes of cloning the species. The goal is ambitious: to create an embryo using ancient genetic material and implant it into a modern horse, effectively bringing the leaner horse back to life. However, the process is far from simple. DNA degrades over time, even in permafrost, and despite months of effort, scientists have struggled to recover usable genetic sequences. Still, the pursuit continues, driven by the possibility of reversing extinction itself. Among the most promising candidates for such efforts is another Ice Age giant, the steppe bison. In 2011, in the Yana Indigirka lowland region of Siberia, local inhabitants uncovered the mummified remains of a steppe bison preserved in remarkable condition. Unlike typical fossil finds, this specimen retained soft tissues and internal structures rarely seen after such immense spans of time. The animal's body was astonishingly intact, with a complete heart, brain, and digestive system still present. Although some organs had shrunk over thousands of years, its blood vessels remained nearly perfectly preserved. The absence of fat around its abdomen suggested that the bison likely died from starvation, its final condition frozen into the archaeological record. Estimated to be over 9,000 years old, it remains the most complete steppe bison ever discovered, allowing scientists to study its internal anatomy in unprecedented detail. In 2022, researchers conducted a necropsy on another steppe bison specimen, dating back approximately 8,000 years. Its preservation was so exceptional that scientists believe cloning may be possible, using intact chromosomes extracted from its skin, muscle, and even its wool. Given humanity's extensive experience with bovine breeding, this species presents a more realistic opportunity for revival compared to others. The idea of bringing back Ice Age animals is no longer confined to science fiction, yet the path forward remains uncertain and complex. In 2014, along the frozen banks of a remote Siberian river, another discovery would emerge from the thawing ground. Local hunters and researchers noticed a dark mass exposed along the river's edge. What lay beneath was the body of a young woolly rhinoceros. Its thick skin still covered its body, textured and intact, with patches of fur clinging to its surface. The contours of its limbs were clearly defined, its small size revealing that it was at a young age when it was instantly frozen. It looked more like a sleeping animal, rather than one that died tens of thousands of years ago. They even gave it a name, Sasha. Yet Sasha had remained untouched, as though it had been sealed away almost instantly, protected from the outside world before any natural process could begin. What exactly caused all of these events? What kind of cataclysm has occurred, and is there a possibility that this event could occur once again, catching us off guard just like all of these animals? One of the most controversial ideas to attempt an explanation came from Immanuel Velikovsky, who proposed that planetary interactions in the past may have triggered sudden global catastrophes. According to his hypothesis, the Earth had not always moved in perfect stability through space. Instead, it may have experienced periods of extreme disturbance, influenced by close encounters with other celestial bodies. These interactions, he suggested, could generate immense gravitational and electromagnetic forces, capable of disrupting the planet's rotation, atmosphere, and climate in a matter of hours. In such a scenario, the sky itself would not remain still. The balance of forces that governs the Earth would be thrown into chaos. Winds of unimaginable speed could sweep across continents, oceans could shift violently, and temperatures could plummet with devastating suddenness. Regions that were once temperate could be thrust into freezing conditions almost instantly. Animals grazing in open fields would have no warning, no time to flee. They would be caught exactly where they stood, their final actions preserved in ice. Another theory, equally controversial yet deeply connected to these ideas, was proposed by Charles Hapgood and later discussed with Albert Einstein. Known as the Earth crust displacement theory, it suggests that the outer shell of the planet, the crust itself, could shift rapidly over the underlying mantle. Unlike the slow movement described by modern plate tectonics, this hypothesis envisions sudden, large-scale displacement occurring over a relatively short period of time. If such a shift were to occur, the consequences would be almost unimaginable. Entire continents could move thousands of kilometers, relocating regions from temperate zones into polar conditions in a geological instant. What was once a green and habitable landscape could become a frozen wasteland overnight. The atmosphere would be thrown into violent upheaval, generating storms and temperature gradients far beyond anything recorded in modern history. This theory attempts to address one of the most puzzling aspects of the frozen discoveries: the presence of temperate vegetation inside animals now found in Arctic conditions. If these regions were once much warmer and were suddenly displaced toward the poles, it could explain why mammoths were feeding on fresh grasses moments before being frozen. It could explain why entire bodies, not just bones, were preserved in such extraordinary detail. The bodies do not show signs of long decline. They do not tell stories of slow adaptation to a cooling world. Instead, they point toward interruption, toward events that unfold too quickly for life to respond. Could these theories be incomplete, exaggerated, or misunderstood attempts to explain a deeper truth? Or do they hint at mechanisms that have yet to be fully recognized? The idea that the Earth could undergo rapid, catastrophic transformation is unsettling, not only because of what it implies about the past, but because of what it suggests about the future. If such an event were possible, it would not announce itself in advance. It would not unfold gradually, allowing time for preparation. It would come suddenly, reshaping the world in ways that would leave only fragments behind. Fragments like the mammoth, silent witnesses to a moment when the rules of nature seemed to break. If such forces once acted upon the planet with the speed and intensity suggested by these frozen records, the possibility, however remote, that they could occur again introduces a deeply unsettling perspective. Not as a slow unfolding crisis that humanity could adapt to, but as a sudden shift, one that arrives without warning and leaves no time for reaction. In such a scenario, the stability we experience today would prove to be far more fragile than it appears. If a rapid crustal displacement or external planetary disturbance were to take place, the first signs would likely not be subtle. The sky itself could change, with shifts in solar patterns, unusual atmospheric behavior, and disruptions to magnetic fields. Navigation systems could fail, communication networks could collapse, and the predictable rhythm of day and night might begin to distort. What begins as confusion could quickly escalate into global instability. Then would come the environmental consequences. Winds of unimaginable force could sweep across continents, carrying dust, ice, and debris at speeds capable of reshaping entire landscapes. Oceans could surge inland, not as isolated tsunamis, but as sustained walls of water driven by planetary-scale imbalance. Regions that are now temperate could experience a sudden and catastrophic drop in temperature, freezing within hours rather than seasons. For living organisms, including humans, the impact would be immediate and overwhelming. There would be no gradual migration, no time to adapt infrastructure or behavior. Entire populations could be caught in transit, in motion, mid-action, just as the animals preserved in the permafrost. The systems that sustain modern civilization, electricity, transportation, supply chains, would fail almost instantly under such conditions. And yet, despite the dramatic nature of these possibilities, there is no clear evidence that such an event is imminent. These theories remain speculative, existing on the edges of scientific understanding. But the frozen record beneath our feet serves as a reminder that the Earth has experienced moments of sudden change before. The question is not only whether it could happen again, but whether we would even recognize the warning signs if it did, or if, like those ancient creatures, we would simply become part of the next layer, preserved in a moment that ended too quickly to comprehend. Long before recorded history, there may have existed advanced ancient civilizations capable of building gigantic megalithic structures that would still challenge us even today. They appear to have lifted enormous stone blocks weighing thousands of tons and stacked them with almost laser-like precision, using methods we still cannot fully explain. Many of these blocks remain difficult to lift even with modern cranes, which makes their achievement seem even more extraordinary. They also shaped some of the hardest stone on Earth into mathematically precise and seemingly flawless monuments, leaving us to wonder who these builders were and how they accomplished what appears impossible. Were they truly just primitive societies, or were they masters of a forgotten technology now lost to the sands of time? Explore the evidence pointing to an ancient, global, and technologically sophisticated civilization that may once have ruled across the planet. Its builders created gigantic sites whose ruins still stand today. Discover more in our ebook, Prehistoric Megastructures, a nearly 500-page volume filled with images and in-depth analysis of some of the most astonishing and unexplained ancient structures ever found. Inside, you will explore monuments that appear to have been built with advanced technology from a forgotten age. The ebook is currently available at a limited discount. Make sure to get your copy before the offer ends.